think about aid to Africa, and what comes to mind? You think of people raising money for food, for water, for education, for all manner of things that are necessary for life that we take here for granted. But go to Uganda, and there they have lots of schools. They're free. Hospitals, such as they are free. And thanks to so many NGOs, there's lots of water delivery systems. Now, Uganda also is bountiful and so beautiful that Winston Churchill called it the Pearl of Africa. However, go to Uganda for a while and travel around and look around, and what do you see? You see broken down water delivery systems, wells that are dead, children unable to go to school. It's really disappointing, and you ask yourself, why is it that progress has been so slow and is not really going on, despite the fact that Barron said last year alone, $63 billion was allocated for aid to Africa, 13 billion of which was from NGOs, and I'm sure Uganda got its fair share. But yet, progress seems not to be not at all. So you ask yourself, well, why? Why is this? So much money, so much effort, so little progress. The problems seem intractable. Why? Well, as it turns out, between 2009 and 2006, my husband and I traveled back and forth to Uganda to visit my ailing dad. He was elderly and he passed on in 2009. So we decided that because he and my great-grandfather had both worked so tirelessly for their country, my father was the first ambassador to the United, and my first ambassador to the United Nations, and my great-grandfather was the first ambassador to be, first man to be knighted, African, sorry. So we decided we would have an NGO in their honor, and we would name it after my father, because we decided that those two, my great-grandfather and my dad, believed that education and health were the bedrock of any successful society. And we named it the Kironde Education and Health Fund. So somehow we were going to go to Africa, and despite all these abandoned schools and broken down systems, we were going to manage to get it right. So my husband Bill and I set out to do this NGO, and we reached out to some friends of ours that we had there. There was a local gentleman named Samuel, who was a trusted local leader in his community. And he and his wife Mary had hooked up with a local matriarch, and they had formed an organization called the Kigalama Children's Initiative. They were working with the local villages, Kigalama villages, and they were going to take care, hopefully, of all these poor children and vulnerable and orphan children who were unable to go to school and who were really left out in the cold. Samuel saw no future for them unless they found homes to nurture and educate them. And they could never grow up to become productive citizens if this continued on. They were getting into trouble. They were running into fights. The girls were being raped. It was really quite a disaster for these children. So we thought, oh, education and health, that's where we come in. But Samuel explained to us that, you know what? No, because in order to get these children into school, they first have to have homes to go to school from. You're coming in here, swooping in with your, Western notions of what aid is really like, but you see all littered around you all the detritus of aid that's failed. Let's do something different. Let's think about, I want you to start thinking about aid in a more holistic way. So we said, why don't you meet with the villagers and ask them what they need in order to make this happen? And your goal of education will come to pass because you'll be able to then educate these children the way that you'd like to do so. So we went and chatted with the villagers, and together with Samuel, we decided that we were going to look at education and health in a very holistic way. Okay, so we were not going to just simply throw school fees at them. That's not what they needed. So we sat down with them, and we asked me, of course, I walked up there in my designer shoes, little all happy. And when I got there and I sat in this little hut, I realized that, oh my goodness, this is so upside down. When I went back that night, I took those shoes off, put on my flip-flops, and I had a backache for a whole week. But there was no way I was going to actually, it just seemed upside down. So what we learned from these villages was as profound as it was heartbreaking. They would love to take kids in, but life was too hard. As it was, they were barely eking out a meager living for themselves, and their own children could barely get to and from school because they were so busy, caught up in the drudgery of fetching water and getting sick from the filthy water they were fetching. The wells were far away and dangerous. Some of the kids were drowning. And back and forth going to the well, they had to go in the morning before school, therefore they were late for school. Because these trips were like 2 or 3 hours long. Even the little kids were going. And then in the afternoon, after school, they had to go fetch more water. So where was time for study? There was no time for study. So, and on the way, as I said, girls were getting raped and the boys were getting into fights. It was really very horrible. So they said to us, what we need is potable water. So in my mind, I'm thinking, a tap? No, well, how's that going to work? They don't have water systems. But my husband and I said, oh my goodness, a well. Because we'll build them a well. That's the Western idea, correct? Our well won't silt over. We'll figure it out. But they said to us, we've had enough wells. We're tired of these one-offs. You see those wells down there that our children are falling in? We're sick of that. We're tired of all these one-offs. And so they said, we need potable, accessible water. And we decided, okay. So together we sat with them, because they were the stakeholders. And Samuel knew their problems, and they knew their problems better than we could ever know them. I mean, I live in Cambridge. Do I know the problems of Newton? I don't. And what their needs are? So we all came up with this idea that we would give them rainwater cisterns. But they would have to have skin in the game. Samuel, who knew them well, said to us, and they trusted him, said, you guys, they'll give you rainwater cisterns. Imagine that. That's what they were trying to get away from. We'll give them rainwater cisterns that will give them clean water, but they will have to come up with the gutters themselves. And they will have to come up with the little pads that they're going to go on. Now look how happy these people are. I mean, this is on a bicycle. By the way, in Uganda you can take anything on your bicycle. 5 chickens, bananas, 4 children, a water cistern. And there they are taking their water cisterns home. Within 6 months of getting these water cisterns, it was just a game changer. And here's the great thing. The kids could go to school because the energy they were putting into going to fetch water was now energy being put into schoolwork. The mothers were proud. They were digging in their shambas. The husbands and men were busily doing their coffee. There was really a sense of pride all of a sudden and possibility. Okay? The tenor of the village completely changed. Possibility and hope translated into action for a better life that they had never even imagined. When we went back to America, they sent us these pictures. What had happened is they had decided to have a home improvement project. So they fixed up their homes and they put little flowers around their water cisterns. They sent us photographs of themselves standing proudly in front of their Kironde Education and Health Fund, cistern. And look how happy and smiling they are from the picture that I had showed you before of the children who were orphans running around. These people were now onto, they were actually evolving from subsistence farmers to entrepreneurs, because all of a sudden they were like, okay, when you come back, these are the things we want to talk about. We rushed back there, they were happy to see us, and surprised that we'd come back, and we toured all the all their little homes that they had improved, and looked at how they'd put up their water cisterns, and they wanted to talk about business. They said, we want to do business, we'd like to make money. Because you know what? Rather than you giving us fees, help us educate our children by helping us make enough money that we can do that. So if you're walking around Cambridge, Mass, and a bus hits you, I can still send my child to school. So my husband, who's an architect and my partner in this NGO said, well, you guys, what would you like to do? And the bricks are a big deal in Uganda. They're everywhere, and people sell them. And this is their brick-making fashion. Bill said to them, you know, that's neither ecologically sound, nor is it really, it's not practical. It's not, you know, you can't really sell bricks seriously that way. So he decided to introduce them to something that's medium tech, because we'd read a book called Small is Beautiful that tells you that, you know what, don't go giving people too high tech that they can't cope with. Give them medium tech that they can learn to use, and this way you won't have these problems you have of all these things that are just deserted in Africa that you find everywhere. They gave them this fabulous thing, and you go back there and it's like rusted over, dead. And he explained to them, Makerere University in Kampala had come up with this brick-making machine. And he explained to them that this brick-making machine has interlocking bricks, uses less cement, and is very practical. But they weren't ready for that. They couldn't relate to that yet. So we thought, okay, we respect them. But they were learning, and they were evolving, and they were open to learning. And they said, well, we'll do chickens. So we helped them with that. And we'll do goats. We helped them with that. But we were also learning how to deal efficaciously with a donee community. And we had come to the conclusion that the way to change things was to change their social ecosystem, so that that ecosystem could nurture productive citizens. Now, with hopes of prospects for a better life and their family and future, these were people with dreams. And guess what? When we went back there, they actually approached my husband and said, you know, we think that we will try we're ready to try that. They now trusted us. We had partnered with them, and they were trusting us. Now, mind you, had we given them a well in the first place like we'd thought, oh gee, a well, and ours won't silt over, guess what? That well would have been easy, but actually it wouldn't have solved their underlying problem, because the children would have still had to go to that well and deal with that well. And they remembered that, and they told us so. So now they're willing to listen to my husband, and they were ready to you know, have a look at this brick machine. And the thing that surprised us when we got back there, they had started a little savings and loan all by themselves, and they were sophisticated because somebody had taken their money, some bank, and made a runner, went out of business, but basically stolen it. So now they had their little savings and loan, they were doing cows and goats and sheep, and my husband said, okay, great, so we've raised the money and we got them this brick machine, and we took it to them, and at this point, they had a piece of surprise news for us. They said, you know what, we were donated a piece of land, so we'd like to build a business center. That's what we'd like to do. So that the bricks that we're going to make, we're going to sell some, and we're going to use some for our business center. So there's a brick machine. And when we brought that brick machine, you would have thought we brought them gold from King, I don't know, Tut's palace or something. They were so happy. And they were all ready to make the bricks and to try it, and the bricks were interlocking, and my husband designed them an office, you know, like what it's going to look like, and they were so excited. It's so interesting because we take so much for granted. And what struck me was this all began with these tanks of water that freed them. It was like an incubus had been lifted off their backs. It was really extraordinary what that one thing had done for them. And that's because we had listened to them and given them what they needed, what they knew they wanted, and that they could use. And so one of the things that struck us is that this partnership and trust that we've built with them would also allow us to you know, help them with even some other social issues. And before, when we had spoken about the kids going to the wells and the girls being raped, there'd been this kind of skepticism and oh yeah, those girls. But this time when we went back there with the brick machine, and we sat down with them, do you know that all of a sudden the kids did this little skit, we were having a reception, and they did a little skit in which one of the girls was being raped, and these boys came and saved her, and they patted her on the back, and the culprit, the villain, was hauled off. It was very dramatic, and it really showed us that they now trusted us to work with them. And so Another thing that happened that day that was really quite remarkable is they began to talk to us about domestic violence. And we discussed the issues of birth control, something they never would have done before, because these are shy people. And violence and how some of their husbands beat them, and they were like ready to point them out and call them out. So because we learned then that, you know what, when you have a partnership with people, and they trust you, you can make differences in their lives in more ways than just one. And that giving just aid in a vacuum really doesn't work ultimately, because the people don't have buy-in. We are just a small 4-person NGO. There's my husband Bill, Patty, a permanent member, board member, and rotating board members. But because and it's hard for us because, you know, we're just doing it out of our dining room, and it's very hard to raise money because most people are like, well, stick with water. No, no, no. Now we're on to something else. Why, you on to something else? Well, yes, because we're trying to build something. So we really believe, Bill and I, and our NGO, that it's important to work with trusted local leaders, many of whom, there's so many of them within most countries have them. Somebody who loves their country. And to form partnerships. This way it will yield sustainable results. This is a marathon. And if you really want to help people, you have to stay with them and introduce medium technology, like the cisterns, the brick machine, that they can work themselves and use. Our whole goal here, Bill and I, is to change the world one village at a time. So we want to take this model and work it after we've settled them. We'd like to take it to another village. And this is what we've learned. And by the way, you don't have to be big or anything like that. I mean, we're on nobody's radar. We're just little. But that doesn't stop us. Each and every one of us can make a difference. Never think, oh, but how can I do it? Because we can all do it. And you can change the world one village at a time. Thank you.